seniors. I just want to make sure that we thank everybody for coming tonight. And when we look at Avid, Avid is really about celebrating your hard work, students, and really making sure that we recognize that there is no elevator to the top. And so when we look at the hard work and dedication that you put into your education, specifically for your next steps, that is amazing. So thank you. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Mr. Shepherd.
Some of, I believe, to be my greatest life's success principles. I'll start with the first. I believe that what we fail to honor, we lose. I'll say it again. What we fail to honor, we lose. You too. I believe every human in this room has a genius, a greatness that may be undetermined, undiscovered, but I'm convinced, I'm persuaded. I have done this work in schools, and I work with young people, and I work with adults, and I work with elders. I am convinced that every human has a genius. But I believe one of the reasons why we as humans struggle to sometimes see the fruition or the manifestation of our genius or our greatness is because we never knew what we were capable of. Let me say it like this. I believe that sometimes we struggle with tapping into our genius because we never knew who we were. We never knew who we were, and sometimes most of us spend majority of our life just succumbing to the idea of who and what other people say we were, or who they say we are. But I'm convinced that you are somebody. See, watch. Now I'm going to do a quick analogy, and this illustration only works if you participate. So this is what we're going to do. I want everyone to put their imaginary hats on with me. I want everybody to put their imaginary hats on. And I want you to imagine that I give each and every one of you an apple seed. And I want you to imagine that this apple seed is very special. So special that it would solve all of the problems that you're facing in your life. Maybe in your family's life. However, some of you may say, well, I'm not a farmer and I don't know how to plant and grow apple seed. Well, let's just say, for the sake of this discussion, that you followed all farming protocol. And let's say, although this apple is very special, it grows just like every other apple seed. So here's the $1 million question. If I gave you an apple seed today, you went home and planted it in the soil, how many of you, by a show of hands, if I came back in 2 years, would have apples for me? Show of hands. Okay, we got some hands in the room. Okay, my believers are in the room. I hear, come on, I see that, I see you. How about this? Because there's still some people I need to convince. How about I came back in 4 years? Do you have apple seeds for me? Do you have apples for me? Do you have apples for me? Come back in 4 years. Right? A few people are like, yeah, okay. Okay, what about this? 5 years. 5 years. 5 years. Okay, how about this? And this, if you would have apples for me after 6 years, I want to raise your hand. 6 years. You're like, yeah, come on, 6 years. Well, the reason why I use that analogy, because most of us, maybe not everybody, but most of us, when we want an apple, we just go to our local grocery store. And so what that means is we're from the farming process to understanding that when a farmer takes an apple seed and sticks it in the soil, that your most common apples that we buy from the grocery store took someone anywhere from 7 to 10 years to grow. Now, why is this important? Because I believe every human has a genius. Every human has a greatness. But just like those special apple seeds, your genius, your greatness takes time to grow. And most of us never experience our greatness. We never see our genius. It's because we think it's like the microwavable thing that's in our world. That we say, well, I have a dream and I'm going to be great, I'm going to change the world. And then 6 months later, we're looking at our life and we say, well, why haven't you changed the world? Well, where's your genius? Well, friends, I am convinced that just like those apple seeds, your life, your genius needs time to grow. Your genius needs to be placed in the right environment. You know what I discovered? Is that pineapples don't grow natural in Washington. I don't know, anybody else discover that? Anybody like just randomly see a pineapple tree growing in Washington, right? They don't, this is the natural, this environment's not conducive to them growing. You do? Oh, she's growing one, right? She's circumventilated the process, all right? But what's interesting though is there are certain things that don't grow if they're not placed in the right environment. And I believe the same thing is true for our students. The same thing is true about our life. And do you know that the word education is derived from the word edu? And the word edu means to draw out or to extract. So here's my encouragement for you. That just like the apple seed, every single thing that your children need in order to be successful is already within them. Everything the apple seed needs in order to become an apple is inside of it. But what does it need? It needs to be placed in the right environment to grow. But can I tell you, friends, students, that planting your seed is just one small portion of your success. So now I want to give you 5 things. 5 simple truths. The first is seed. Everyone say seed. Your seed is a representation of your greatness. Can I encourage you with something that a mentor of mine once told me? His name is Andrew Young. Some of you might know Andrew Young, famous civil rights leader. One thing that he told me is, he says, Antonio, find something worth living for. Young people, find something worth living for. I believe that sometimes the reason why we fail to become what we were destined to be is because we don't have something worth living for. Everyone needs a seed. But here's what I know to be true about your seed. Is that there's someone waiting on your seed to become what it was destined to be. And you don't plant apple seeds and get orange fruit. You don't plant apple seeds and get grapes. We all need something that's worth living for. Young people, hear me. There's nothing else that you hear me. We all need something worth living for. And I believe that there's someone waiting for you to become you. Here's the second piece. It's sacrifice. Everybody say sacrifice. Do you know that the moment you place an apple seed in the soil, you have to do what? Water? What are you going to do? You got to water it. But before you water it, you have to cover it. So it means apple seeds grow in sometimes darkness, seclusion. Sometimes it has to sacrifice the idea of being an apple seed. Do you know that in order for an apple seed to become an apple, it has to cease to being a seed? It's no longer a seed. Now let me apply this to your dream, to your greatness, to your genius. That sometimes in life, there are ideas that each and every one of us have to face, where we cannot become who we were destined to be, holding on, hoarding ideas to the idea of who we used to be. I'll make this personal for me. A year ago, I went back to school and I got my master's. One of the scariest things that I ever did in my life. I played college football, and my senior year, I tore my pectoralis major. And just like a lot of other good athletes, I was a North Cal All-American. I thought I was going to play in the NFL. One of my really good friends, his name's Akeem Hicks. He's ranked 30th in the NFL, future Hall of Famer, and I was better than him. I thought I was going to go to the NFL. I tore my pectoralis major, and I did not know who I was. Because my identity was wrapped in sports and athletics. And now that I could no longer play sports, I did not know who I was. Because I graduated high school because I was an athlete. I kept my grades up because I was an athlete. And now my senior year, I had lost everything and I'm no longer an athlete and I thought I was a fraud. So when I was thinking about the idea of becoming a master's level student, I had to let go of the ideas that were keeping me from going back to school. Things like, I'm smart, I'm dumb, just another dumb jock or another dumb athlete. I remember people laughing at me when asked to speak in front of people. Do you know I failed my public speaking class in college? So the idea of going back to school to get a master's degree, you can imagine, was difficult. But what I realized that if I was going to become what I believed, what I was destined to be, a graduate student at a master's level, that I had to sacrifice the ideas and sacrifice the lies that I wasn't capable. Here's the third thing. Is germinate. Everybody say germinate. Do you know that imagination is consequential to your success? I believe that oftentimes the moment that we stop dreaming is the moment we stop living. Your imagination is consequential to your future success. I'll never forget, I was speaking, the keynote speaker at an assembly. And there was a 4th grade student that came to me at the end of the presentation, and he said, thank you so much for speaking and talking about having a dream and having a vision. But I have to tell you that my mom told me that I need to grow up and stop dreaming. And this young person began to tell me about all the issues and traumas and things that were going on in his life. And he said, my mom says I need to get real and stop dreaming because you have responsibility. And I said, young man, young king, with all due, I understand that there may be things going on in your world, but I think you need to tell your mom that you need to get real and start dreaming. So much of who you were called or destined to be has to do with this curiosity of what you could become. Some of us live in the shadows of who people tell us we are. What the media says we are, what social media says we are, what Facebook says we are, what our friends say that we are. But I believe that so much of our success is on the other end of our curiosity. And here's the fourth one. I want everyone to say time. You know what I've realized is all things great take time. If you find an overnight success, I will show you a fraud. Young person, if you live life long enough, I am convinced of this, that life will punch you in the nose. Life has a way of distorting our vision if we're not careful. We all face things, problems in our life. COVID's, right? COVID-19 in our world, right? That nobody was prepared for. But this is where we have to be reminded that there will be things that come into our life just as a means to knock us off track. Has anybody ever been punched in the nose before, or hit the nose with a ball? Or what happens when we get hit in the nose? Huh? Bleeds? Yeah. Bleeds. What are other things that happen?
Raccoon eyes.
Your eyes water, right? So I remember, never forget, I got hit in the nose with a basketball. It didn't hit me hard enough that I would have a bloody nose. But my eyes started watering. And I'm like, yo, I can't cry in front of my friends. But I'm crying. And I realized that life is the same way. That sometimes we get hit with things that distort our vision. And we get knocked off track. And this is why farmers would take their utensils out and start pruning away things that are dying on the tree, as a means of reminding the tree what it's capable of. Sometimes this can be just as hard as sacrifice, because some of the things that we're pruning are friends. Sometimes it's hard to prune friends that won't allow you to grow. Sometimes it's hard pruning environments, pruning ideology. Sometimes it's family members. Sometimes it's people that we love. Sometimes it's ideas that box in your growth, that require us to go beyond the boxes that this world has put us in. And here's the last thing. The last thing that I want to share with you is never give up. Never give up. Never give up, because there's someone that's waiting for you to become who you were destined to be. And when things get tough, this is why it's so important that you remember the people that are in this room supporting you, because they will be the people to lift you up. They will be the ones to hold you up when things are difficult. They will be the ones to encourage you, to remind you to just keep on going, that there's light at the end of the tunnel. I'll finish with this quick story. Anybody ever been to Chambers Bay in University Place? Beautiful. Well, about a month ago, I'm with my son and both my boys. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. My 8-year-old wanted to bring a scooter. And my 8-year-old got really brave, right? I've never seen this out of him. He's like, Dad, I'm gonna get on my scooter, and there's a long hill. He's like, and I'm gonna ride my scooter all the way down. Now, what I did not ask him before he got on the scooter is if he knew how to stop. He's like, yeah, Dad, I'm good, I know how to do this. And I'm like, all right, okay, man, do your thing. I'm support you. So he's like, he gets on the scooter and he's moving. I'm like, all right, bud, stop now. Slow down. Hey. Next thing I know, I see him dive off of this. He's going so fast, he flies off his scooter. I run down. He's like, Dad, I'm not hurt. I'm not hurt. He's like, I felt kind of good or whatever. I told him, if hey, something happens, you just dive and roll. That's the one thing I did tell him. He's like, Dad, listen, I rolled and I think I'm fine. I think I'm okay. And I said, son, what happened? He says, well, the scooter's broke. I said, it's broke. I start looking at the scooter. I'm like, man, what's wrong? So I get on the scooter. I start going down the hill. And I'm like, no, this thing works. He just didn't put enough weight on it. And so I say, son, this thing's not broke. It works. I just don't think I ever taught you how to properly use the equipment. I said, son, before we leave, you're going to get back on, not the big hill, but you're going to get on this little hill. My son starts crying. And he's like shaking, and he's like, Dad, no, I can't. I can't do it. I said, son, part of my job in life is to prepare you for the tough stuff. And when things get tough, we get tougher. Because one day that Dad's not going to be there, and I'm going to need you to be strong. And so he gets back on the scooter, and he's like shaking. And I'm like, son, I'm going to do it with you. And he's like, I'm most scared I've ever seen him in his life. He's going down, he's shaking. And I'm holding on to him. I'm like, I'm here, son. Don't you give up. He's like, Dad, I'm scared. I said, I know, me too. But don't you give up. And I'm like, put your weight on that back brake. It works. And the next thing I know, I'm like, he's going further from me. And I said, son, you're doing it by yourself. And he gets to the bottom of the hill and he dries his tears. He said, Dad, thank you. I don't think I was ever going to get on a scooter ever again. And I think sometimes in life we all experience hardships and traumas. We get off of our success wagon. And we say, I'll never get on that again because I fell. But maybe you fell because two things. Maybe you didn't know how to properly use the equipment. And maybe you fell because you didn't have the right people around you to cheer you on. Because I know that my son has greatness in him and there's someone waiting on him. I believe my son's going to change the world, and so I'm not going to allow a hill or a scooter to keep him from his success. And that's the same thing that I believe about each and every one of you. Say, I am somebody. One more time. I am somebody. Thank you so much. And don't ever allow anyone else to tell you anything other than that you're great. All right, thank you guys. Love y'all. Thank you.